to register to vote. Now you might say, okay, that's an obvious thing to do. No, it's not. It's a very important thing to do. As I said before, our democracy, our right to vote, came from very brave people who laid down their lives in the 19th century at a time of the utmost oppression. The Chartists who marched on Parliament to demand universal suffrage, to demand accountable parliaments, to demand accountable government. And I'm very proud to say that the MP who presented the Great Charter in the 1850s to Parliament was a man called Charles Duncan, who came from my area, and indeed there's a road named after him and a school named after him in my constituency. So we all walk in the footsteps of those that did great things before us. But if we don't exercise our right to vote, if we don't demand a fair and equitable political system, then we all lose out. The reason voter registration now is very important is this. There are elections coming up next year all over the country in various forms, particularly in Scotland, Wales, Bristol and London, where there are very, very key elections, but there's local authority elections all over next year, and police and crime commissioner elections all over next year. But there is another factor to it. As you know, Parliament consists of two houses, a House of Lords and a House of Commons. I think if we took a sort of straw poll of this room, we would probably come to the view that the House of Lords is, how should I put it gently, less important than the House of Commons. And we might even come to the view that there should be, as I certainly would, an elected second chamber, not an appointed or hereditary second chamber. Idea of government is slightly different, and so he's expanded the House of Lords to the second largest legislative assembly in the world. It's now got over 900 members, and he's threatening to put a couple of hundred more in there in order to make sure he doesn't lose any more votes there. And at the same time, reduce the size of the House of Commons to 600 members from 657. That means every single constituency boundary has to be changed. It also means that the basis on which the calculation of the new boundaries will be made will be the numbers of people who are registered to vote on December the 1st, 2015, i.e. 25 days away. Those numbers matter because the constituency boundaries are going to be drawn on the basis of the number of people registered there, irrespective of the number who register later on. Put it quite bluntly, if you live in a poor inner city part of Britain, if you live in an area where many of the population living in private rented accommodation with only 6-month tenancies, and you don't bother to register, if you're a young person who doesn't bother to register, then you won't count. You might not get a vote unless you register later, but above all, you won't count in the way the boundaries are drawn. So come 2020, unless we get this thing right, Labour will start from a massive disadvantage because of the underrepresentation in constituencies of the inner city, working class, poorer communities who are more likely to vote for, want and elect a Labour government in 2020. So when Margaret asked you if you're good enough to come out on Saturday joining her in campaigning, it matters. But when you go to register people to vote, don't just say, please fill in this form and register to vote. Say what you're voting for. Say the kind of society you want to live in and what it's all about. This government is attacking the very core of our society. I'll give you a couple of examples. The National Health Service, which Margaret referred to. How did we get a National Health Service? How did it happen? Did somebody in Parliament one day sit in the tea room, very nice tea room it is too, very nice chai, oh yes, National Health Service, everybody getting healthcare, yes, good. It was brilliant, brave, inspirational people who saw the poverty and the short lives of those that were underpaid, undernourished, undercared for, who couldn't afford to go to a doctor, couldn't afford to go to a hospital, had to wait for a charity to care for them. So they took the view that healthcare shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold, it should be a human right, free at the point of use for everybody. It was a post-war Labour government going through a period of the most terrible austerity, and a former miner, Anara Bevan, who got us the National Health Service, free at the point of use as a human right. And it's a very, very important human right. And it's under threat. It's under threat by the Health and Social Care Act, which requires 49% of its services to be delivered by the private sector. It's under threat by a government that's deliberately encouraging private medicine at the expense of the NHS and underfunding so much of it. And so, we defend our NHS, we demand a better NHS that does care for all, including those with mental health conditions, and gives real parity of care for those with mental health conditions. And I'm very proud that in the shadow cabinet that we appointed after my election, I appointed Luciana Berger as the first cabinet level minister ever, anywhere, to say her responsibility is mental health. Can affect all of us, and so we campaign to remove the stigma attached to mental health. It can be a problem for any of us at any time, and particularly students often go through periods of immense stress and sometimes find it very difficult to talk to fellow students or anyone else about it. So we remove the stigma, that changes things, and that helps. So that is why I'm absolutely passionately committed to the principle of a health service, universal and free at the point of use, the point of first call for all of us equally to be cared for.